Hello and welcome back to week 2 of Algebra 1 Honors. For the first 3 days of the week, you will be completing lesson 3, which states you're looking at recognizing functions and non-functions. We'll go ahead and move forward with completing your warm-up for today. Your warm-up for today is to identify the domain and range of the relation described by each set of ordered pairs. You will also write an equation using the variables x and y that can map the domain to the range. You will complete questions 1, 2, and 3. Our main goal for the warm-up is for you to be able to write the domain and range. Remember, the variable that represents domain is x, and the variable that represents range is y. The challenge will be to be able to write the equation as well. If you struggle with that, that's okay. You may work with a partner, but our goal will be to get to that point where you're able to write an equation when given the information from your relation. As you go out through the course of today's lesson, remember your essential question. It says you have sorted graphs by their graphical behaviors. How can you describe the common characteristics of the graphs of the functions? You may go ahead and pause the video at this time and hit play when you're ready to move on to the next section. Now we're going to look at today's overview. Our learning objective is students will be able to analyze multiple representations of relations, their key characteristics, and determine if they are a function or not a function. Our demonstration of learning is I will be able to explain in writing what a function is and what a function is not. So how do we make sure we get there? By looking at our success criteria. At this time, I'm going to ask each student to go ahead and review each bullet of the success criteria, and that will help you with having a checklist of the items necessary to be successful for today. You may hit play when you're ready to resume to the next slide. All right, we're going to head and get started. With this particular activity, you may work with a partner, and this activity is called Odd One Out. Question 1 states, which of the graphs shown does not belong with the others? Explain your reasoning. As you work with your partner, you want to answer the questions in the colored bubbles. Those questions are, what do you know? What do you see? And what do you wonder? Be ready to share out. Go ahead and hit play when you're ready to resume the video. All right, let's check it out. I want to be sure you are able to make connections of what functions are. At this time, you'll go ahead and pause this video and play this particular video in the slide deck. So that way students are able to have a broader understanding of what functions are. Be ready to talk about any information that stood out to you or any questions that you may have. All right, so let's tweet about it. How many of you guys like social media? So do I. So with your partner, you want to create a tweet. It states Twitter allows 140 characters. That means letters, symbols, punctuation, things of that nature on a tweet. You will explain what you have learned about functions from the video, with writing your tweet about the functions on a Post-it note or any scratch piece of paper. You have 3 minutes to complete your tweet, and then you'll share out and we'll discuss. Press play when you're ready to resume. We'll start with activity 3.1, functions and non-functions. I want you guys to think about what the prefix non means. What are some other words that have that prefix? What do they mean? You may discuss that with your partner once you start working. One of the things I want you guys to do, because this particular lesson and the several other ones are very heavy in vocabulary terms. Vocabulary is very essential to your understanding in anything that you do in Algebra 1. So I'm going to ask you to create a graphic organizer as pictured on the slide using notebook paper. As you work with your partner, you will add to the list to make sure you know the academic vocabulary. And as an example, your first word could be function. So you will write the word function. You'll then draw an example of what a function is under the word picture, and then you'll write what a function is, or write the definition of the word function. You want to be sure that you're able to add or really highlight any vocabulary that you're provided with on your sheets that you're provided with to ensure your understanding. So if you look at the word relation and the word domain and range just bolded, anytime you see these boxes on your sheets, you want to ensure that you're adding them to your graphic organizer. One of the biggest things to know is what a relation is and in different ways it can be represented. So relations are able to be represented in 6 different ways. You have a set of ordered pairs, an equation, a verbal description, a mapping diagram, graphs, and tables. So you have about 5 minutes to go ahead and complete this particular page and add the information to your graphic organizer. All right, let's think about it. So all functions are relations, but only some relations are functions. So you're going to work with your partner to complete questions 1 through 3, and you're going to answer on the particular paper that you're provided with. Please be sure that you look at the word function and any vocabulary that you have, you're adding it to your graphic organizer. And the questions below are questions to think about as you and your partner answer questions 1, 2, and 3. Question 1 to think about, it says, what is a function in your own words? Question 2 says, what is the difference between a relation and a function? Remember what we just talked about on the think about it part. And question 3 says, what represents the domain and what represents the range? Once you're ready to start back, hit the play button. So now we're going to move on to question 4, which we'll actually discuss as a class. Question 4 says, consider the U.S. shirts function. C of S equals 8S plus 15. What expression in the function equation represents A, the domain of the function, B, the range of the function? Remember, domain is X, and it is the independent variable, and Y is the dependent variable. Y can also be represented in function notation. So anytime you see of a variable, so f of x, and then we have c of s. The c of s represents the range. So you want to go ahead and start thinking about that as you make the connections in what you see. If you look over to the left of the screen, you want to thoroughly read through the problem, make connections, highlight it, be sure you add any particular vocabulary to your graphic organizer. Question 5 then says, describe the possible domain and range for this situation. Questions to think about as you're completing questions 4 and 5 is 1, what are the 2 things that you are comparing? So in this situation, what 2 things are you comparing? Question 2 is, what is the independent variable? What is the dependent variable? So if you have the 2 things you're comparing, one of them will represent independent, which is the X, and one represents the dependent, which is the Y. And think back to last week when we were discussing independent and dependent with the scenarios. Question 3 says, what variables are reasonable? So what makes sense? Let's say, for instance, you're going to Bath and Body Works and buy candles. Would it be reasonable for your domain to be fractions? Not likely. You can't go to Bath and Body Works and buy half a candle. So that's what it means to be reasonable. So as you work through this, or as you work as a class through this particular slide, be sure to look at those questions to think about and make connections in order to successfully answer questions 4 and 5. Press play when you're ready to move on. All right, we're back with this particular slide where you're going to continue to work with your partner to answer questions 6 through 8. With questions 6 through 8, you have about 10 minutes. And remember, any of the bolded words are vocabulary that you want to ensure that you're adding to your graphic organizer. It states a discrete graph is a graph of isolated points. So when you think about discrete, think about disconnected. If they're isolated, that means they're not connected and they're alone. They're by themselves. Now, a continuous graph is a graph of points that are connected by a line or a smooth curve on the graph. Continuous graphs have no breaks. So discrete is disconnected and continuous is connected. Now, visualization of items are very important. So one way to determine a function is by the vertical line test. Remember, vertical is straight up and down. So the vertical line test is a visual method used to determine whether a relation represented as a graph is a function. So you can take whatever writing utensil you're using, and when you have a graph, you're able to use the vertical line test and draw a straight line through the graph at any point. So you may draw multiple lines, and as long as the line hits the graph one time, it is a function. So like the graph on the left. If the line touches the graph more than one time, it is not a function like the graph on the right, because the line or the vertical line touches that particular graph twice. So the vertical line test applies to both discrete, remember disconnected, and continuous or connected graphs. So question 6 says, how can you determine if a relation represented as a set of ordered pairs is a function? You want to explain your reasoning or justify. Question 7 states, how can you determine if a relation represented as an equation is a function? And you want to explain your reasoning as well. Now we'll move on to question 8. Question 8 says, determine which relations represent functions. If the relation is not a function, state why not. So remember what we talked about with the different types of relations. You also, for every item A, B, C, D, E, and F, you want to state the type of relation that you're given as well to make a connection with the vocabulary. You have 10 minutes with your partner to complete questions 6 through 8, and you may resume the video once you're finished. Where are you at? How do you feel about functions and non-functions? Green is you're feeling very confident. Yellow is you need a little help. And red means you're still confused. So please let your teacher know where you're at to ensure that you're able to get to your end goal of your demonstration of learning. All right, so we're at our demonstration of learning. Go ahead and I want you to look at the notes or any examples you've completed today, and you will complete a quick write. The quick write says, explain what a function is and what a function is not. You may write your response at the bottom of question 8. I hope you've been able to learn information about functions and non-functions. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a great day.